My name is Michelle Appel. I'm the Director of Assessment and Decision Support at the University of Maryland in College Park, Maryland. This is my colleague, Tom Dobrzelski. He is our Information and Design Specialist. Anything you see today that looks amazing, that's Tom, with help from Brian Vinson, our Tableau consultant from Technion. Anything you see that you go, why did they do it that way? That would be me. So what we're about to show you is really the work of a ton of people back at home, but we get lucky enough to show it to you. So with that in mind, we're going to talk a little bit about the project overview and how it sits inside of a larger project we're running, what that approach and goals are. Tom's going to take you through a demonstration, I say in quotation marks, because they're really GIFs that we use so that we don't have to depend on the Wi-Fi. We'll talk about some lessons learned, and then we will leave probably 10 minutes, 15 minutes for Q&A at the end. So, project overview. Those of you who are in higher education understand that things don't necessarily change at the speed we'd like them to. And our ecosystem was state-of-the-art 1999 in 2015. And we said, we've got to get a hold of this. We had an electronic fact book that was built on Cold Fusion that was out of support and non-performant. And it would take literally 5 minutes to load some of our reports. We had canned reports that were sitting on a Hyperion server. We called them our WOW reports. And that server had gotten to the point where the only browser that could use it was an old, out-of-date version of Internet Explorer. It was also out of support. And we thankfully managed to upgrade the server off of the thing that caused the UK's healthcare virus problem, but we hadn't managed to get it to a much more modern version. So those were two pretty high risk levels for data breaches. In addition to that, our ad hoc reporting tools were, we were using desktop Hyperion predominantly. And our understanding was that after Oracle bought that it went out of support officially sometime in 2018, maybe. Unofficially, we're paying for support that we probably, if we call them and say something happens, they'll say, oh, sorry, right? So we keep paying the licensing fee to feel better. And then our warehouse is on Oracle, on a version that shall not be named to protect the not so innocent. Let's just say it doesn't take international characters. It's therefore non-performant and outdated and also a risk. And so we were in this situation where we had to sort of change everything all at once. And we said, that's probably not the best strategy. We broke it into multiple streams of work, and that's the executive reporting stream, the ad hoc stream, the data modernization stream, and the data documentation stream. And the two that we attacked first, because of the risk of our Cold Fusion server and the high use it was getting, and because of the terrible documentation that we had, if we were going to change things, we wanted to document appropriately. We went to executive reporting and data documentation. And we said, we'll fix the reporting system on the old data, and then we'll start converting the data into a more modern system on Redshift as we move along, but at least then we don't have two things changing at once that we're trying to check data on. So today we're going to talk through this executive reporting stream, which is what we're using Tableau for. So our goal is pre-digested data for all campus users. We want to make the data free. If you are an employee at the University of Maryland, you should be able to get data, at least in the aggregate, to answer any question that we have. We called the old product profiles. The new product, because no one can decide on a name, is reports.umd.edu, its URL. Yep. Someday it'll get a better name, but we're not decisive on those things. So, and so this is, the first stage of it was just replacing the old stuff that we have, the profiles replacement. That was our highest priority. We finished that last year, and since that time we've been adding new reports and new content areas to Server. And so that's the journey that we're going to talk about. So I was trained in Agile. We tried to take an Agile approach to this, to start small, prove out the concept, build on that, go from there, build on that, keep going. So this slide, I took the stats from June just because it was end of fiscal year. In June 2016, we had done by June 7th, 2016, we had a proof of concept. We had a 10-person server license that we put that proof of concept on. We wrote reports, and we demonstrated that we could use Oracle, Redshift, a variety of data sources to move into that server environment and do what we needed to do. And so from there, we wrote a proposal to buy Tableau Server for the enterprise. June 2017, we had 6 analysts. We had 10 reports done, and they were, unfortunately, for our most high risk users. It was our strategic planning time, and the provost wanted all of the strategic planning documents online, ready to go by college. And so instead of Tom doing, gosh, like 50, 100 different spreadsheets that you have. Yeah. Instead of doing that, we said, oh, let's just put them on Tableau Server. And so the first users for Tableau Server were our deans and our provost, which was no sweat at all, right? So we had 6 analysts wrote those, about 10 reports, about 25 users, but hundreds of hits because they were using them for these meetings that the provost and the deans were having to talk through their strategic goals for the year. By June 2018, we had grown to 25 plus analysts, 50 plus reports. We have hundreds of users, we have thousands of hits, and we had 10 different units using sandboxes in our community of practice. And I say this because we staged bringing users on, and we staged bringing reports on and training in these sort of chunks. And Brian Vinson came, he set up our server in October 2016. That's after we got the go-ahead on that proposal. He set us up in October 2016, and he kept saying to us, why don't you get more people? We got to get more people. And we kept saying, everybody's going to want to use this, and we've got to like figure it out. And so the first people that Brian trained were our analysts in our office, 15 people. The next time we had 50, I want to say. And we now have, that same 50 wants to come back for more training, plus we've got another 25 or so that are ready to go. And so we keep bringing Brian in at strategic points to grow community and grow users, but in a way that we can manage behind the scenes what's going on. So our infrastructure, just for those of you who care about these things, everything sits on this reports.umd.edu platform. It's an Amazon S3 bucket because you can just write straight HTML on it. Most people use S3 to hold data. We're using it to hold HTML code. I know that's a little goofy. Our tech people wouldn't let us write an actual app. So that is the place that everybody goes. From there, you decide whether you're a member of the public or a member of the campus community. If you're a member of the public, we send you to our public site, and all of those are hosted on Tableau Public. We put aggregated data sets up on Tableau Public, and we embed the iframes in our public site. On the campus side, we have the Tableau Server sitting on an Amazon EC2 instance. That elastic content, I think is what EC2 stands for. It allows us to grow it as we grow. So we're paying for not much right now. We'll grow more as we go. Most of our reports on server are aggregated extracts because IR folks, our data, we don't want it to change, right? You change every fall. But we have a couple of content areas that are using either a direct hit into our Redshift box, or a direct hit into SQL, or a direct hit into our Oracle, or the last one is a refreshed hit into the Redshift. So it's a scheduled refresh every night coming out of Redshift. So we've got all sorts of data feeds now going on, and we're trying to teach our users how to pick the data feed that meets their actual needs, because not everything has to be refreshed every time you open the report. For performance, it's much better to do the extracts. Underneath Tableau Public, like I said, we've got these aggregated extracts. We just post a CSV up. And then under Tableau Server, I should have clicked that first. There you go, our different methodologies. All of these slides will be available on the website, and Tom and I are both in the, on the Tableau app. We're both in the app. We're happy to send these as well. So what were our goals? Our first goal was to reduce our risk. We had a lot of it, and we needed to figure out how to get rid of the riskiest stuff first. We needed to modernize our data architecture. We're in the middle of doing that now, and we'll start swapping out the new Redshift data sources with the get rid of the Oracle. We really needed to improve the quality of our data and our metadata. We know that our underlying data are not nearly as clean as they ought to be, and they get cleaned only when we do our census snapshotting for the IR. So we say their IR gets the data cleaned twice a year, and maybe not even fully clean then, as well as we can do it. And we wanted to automate as much as we could, because right now we have a very manual process. We are still in the middle of our fall freeze process. We're still checking things by hand. It's really manual. We really need to get rid of that. Our standards, number one is whatever we do has to be secure. Our IT security folks, I think we've engaged them more than probably any project on campus, sometimes to our detriment. It absolutely has to be accessible. That is one of my core values, and it is one of our office's core values, and is one of the university's core values. So we want to make everything we can as accessible as we can. It needs to be responsive. We're still working on that. We're still working on some of these things, but responsive. Obviously, we all want everything to be accurate. Like, that should be a given. We want to document what we're doing, and particularly get that documentation into the hands of our users when they want it and in ways that they can understand it. Our old documentation was a lot of SQL, like, oh, just use this SQL language, and that's what this field means. The provost doesn't understand SQL. We need to make it so that they can understand. We've really, really tried hard to be collaborative. And so working with IT, working with the units, this isn't our project, it's everybody's project, we just lead it. And then the last, take a look at that teapot. You would not want to pour tea from that teapot. And so usability, making this so it's not painful to use. So we really approached this as not just a software project. We said this is about building community, it's about branding, it's about training and support, which we got from Technion, and which we now give to our users, and it's about mentoring, which, again, Technion's super helpful to us, and now we have Tom, Amber, another of our kind of experts in-house in IRPA, are mentoring new report writers. And so we really said, this has to be more than just We implement Tableau Server, here you go, yay! It has to be a whole rollout. With that all said, Tom's going to tell you what it looks like.
All right. Hi, everybody. So as Michelle mentioned, our site lives on reports.umd.edu. A user will identify as either a public user or a campus user. That shows up the first time they visit the website, and after they make that choice, they will default to whichever view they selected. I should also mention that Michelle said earlier that these are GIFs. They're going to loop through, so if it goes too fast, it will loop again. So this is what the public side looks like. We have 10 reports on there. They all are running off of CSV aggregate data, so no identifiable information on it. And that's what allows us to host it on Tableau Public.
For free.
For free. We have different categories on there so you can identify what data are in each report, and then you can select a report. You get this helpful little image that kind of directs you to new things in Tableau. Again, you can say that you don't want to see that again. It kind of orients you to the interface, the toolbar, how you can go backwards, forwards, and download those kinds of things. In this report, you can see that we have an hover over with information on the report. This works as our documentation for our public reports. It tells you how to use it, the nuances of the data, some best practices, tips to using the report, to select a certain amount of terms, otherwise it won't display correctly, those kinds of things that we put in there for the users.
And if you're checking this out on the mobile version right now, we haven't made prioritization to be for a mobile public yet. So sorry, it's a bit jumbled.
Right. Another thing that you could tell from the thumbnails on that first bit and on the report itself is that we have a common look and feel to all of our reports. We utilize a template that for all of our campus reports, we ask that users maintain our template so that it provides consistency, and consistency leads to credibility, that you know that you're getting a verified view of the data, and you can trust it because it looks like all the other ones that are trusted. And it kind of, once you figure out how to navigate that, then you've got it down. You don't need to relearn because someone else chose to have their filters on the right-hand side or chose to use a different color scheme for the same fields. So we have a style guide that we use to kind of promote and ensure that users maintain that consistency. Now, if a user had selected campus, they get this message that tells you the terms of service, what you're agreeing to by viewing these reports, and then you get to our Navigator. So this is a Tableau workbook that we built that uses the Postgres data from Tableau and is updated live so that as soon as we add a report to our campus views, that it automatically gets in our Navigator. And again, this is for campus users, only employees. They have to log in with their Active Directory, and it's for all employees that can see this. This workbook has a number of features. So in the right there, it's filtering on the tags that are associated with the report. You can also filter by content area, which is another name for the projects that we have on there. Content area was just a more familiar terminology for our users. Selecting a report, you get a description, the description that's in Tableau, as well as links to each of the tabs in that workbook. And then you can also see all of the tags associated with that report. At the bottom, we have the top 5 viewed, the top 5 campus reports that have been updated recently, and then your personalized top viewed reports. So again, using that Postgres data, we're able to kind of personalize everyone's experience when using this Navigator. And that especially comes in the bottom left-hand corner once we get back there. It is. That has any reports that you have favorited. You can favorite a report, and then you can find it in that Navigator whenever you need it. That works for all reports that you have access to. So this Navigator only has ones that are available to the entire campus, but if you had a personalized Sandbox, you could favorite a report there, and then you could find it in the Navigator.
That's really helpful. So for some of the personalized reports we make for the provost senior staff, we send them the link to the report the first time, show them how to favorite it, and then they can find it from here again anytime they want to.
This is viewing one of our reports. All of our 10 public reports are in our campus level, and they have a little bit more interactivity and more information and the ability to kind of filter differently. So let's go in there and doing a bunch of different things. And then the second tab is a report description. So whereas in the public reports we had to hover over, this is our data documentation website, data docs, that has a summary of the report. It has all of the data elements, some description of the report, how to use it, nuances about the data, all those things that were in the public one, as well as some additional information, additional context that would be specific to campus users, and then the data elements, so that you can click on any one of those data elements and get a specific definition for that element. So what is a new freshman? How do we define it? Those kinds of things.
And we will not let a report go to the campus without this documentation. This is a gatekeeper. And every person that wants a public or a campus report has to do this documentation. So it's a way that we're also documenting and cleaning up the data. And the data stewards do that documentation, not in conjunction with the report writers. Yeah. No, it's a website that's embedded in the Tableau sheet, and so we built our own because our IT folks didn't like, we had been using Data Cookbook, and you could just as easily embed Data Cookbook in here to do that documentation.
So from here at the bottom, I should mention that this all lives in that S3 bucket website that has, some branding on it that allowed us to kind of have some more control over it, as opposed to sending people directly to Tableau Server. We were able to have the Navigator that limited to only the campus report, so you know what's verified, as well as Maryland branding. We got the M circle up there. And then at the bottom, we are able to have a footer that has a link to our web accessibility that is a requirement for all campus pages, as well as help and unit lookup. So this is the unit lookup right here. It's at the bottom on the right, and it'll take you to a way to see the entire organization of the university, from division to department to unit and unit code, as well as the major lookup, so that you could search for a certain major and see where it falls in the university. So in this one, it's looking for all majors that have bio in it. And you can see that most of them fall under, surprisingly enough, not the Department of Biology. So those kinds of things, as well as on the final tab, a set of definitions that kind of show you how our unit code is made up, as well as definitions for each of those kind of groupings. That what is a division, what is a department, how are those things actually defined? So as Michelle had said earlier, and you probably have heard it a couple of times now, documentation has been vital to this process, and it's something that we are really working to make sure that we have everything well documented and that users can find it. And then at the bottom on the left-hand side, we have the help, which links over to our Confluence wiki site that allows users to see any kind of questions that they might have, and that's our number one stop for questions about the report site. And we tried our best to listen to our users, see what questions they were asking, and then post those answers on the site so that any user who has a similar question can find the answer. One of our biggest issues was our VPN. It started that we needed to have a VPN when you access the campus reports, and it was a very specific VPN, different from one that a lot of the users were using already. And so people would click on the link and they'd click on the campus reports and nothing would load. And they were like, it's broken, it doesn't work, which was not good. So that was our first question. We did a number of trainings with people to show them which VPN to use. Thankfully, we are no longer required to be on that VPN if you are on campus, so that has not been as big of an issue anymore.
Like I said, security was really concerned about this initially, and so they just kept insisting and insisting and insisting that even if you were on a campus network, you had to be on the VPN. And it took one of the deans just like repeatedly calling security and finally calling the CIO and saying, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. And Michelle has had to help me 3 times. And FYI, that dean had been in the White House overseeing like the Office of Science Technology and overseeing NSA. And he was like, this is nothing, like, this is not, like, this is just ridiculous. And so finally we won. Not that it was a battle, but it took us 6 months to get there.
There were definitely some celebratory emails going on. And then on our site, we have a link to view it in Tableau. So maybe you are more comfortable in the Tableau Server environment. It's where you can favorite things, those kinds of things. And so we have a link that any report, once you visit it, you can see that report on server and then navigate through the breadcrumbs and get back to the projects and see where things lie and see the whole server. So you're allowed to choose which way is your favorite, and you can see things that way as well. And then we have the unit sandbox. So now we're really getting into the community of users on campus that are utilizing Tableau. They've been growing, and that is good, and very encouraging seeing some of the stuff that they're building now. And so a unit will have a sandbox that is controlled by the unit, and they are available to select users as they define, and then a work in progress project. So that's where they can put any drafts, anything that they're testing. The idea is that their primary sandbox is for verified reports that users in their unit need to use for work, for day-to-day, whereas the work in progress is stuff that's still in progress, and that they can share with testers. So that led to 3 user groups being defined for each of our sandboxes, that there are the analysts, those are the ones that are writing the reports that have Tableau desktop. Then there are the testers, the people that are trusted users that will give them good feedback that they have identified to check those reports in the work in progress project. And then there are the viewers, so the small group of unit stakeholders who will be viewing and utilizing the reports. Here we have our template. So this is what we give our new desktop users to build their campus reports. If you are keeping your reports in your sandbox, we don't put any limits on how you design your report, how you lay it out. You can do whatever you want. But if it's going on campus, if it's going to be part of the campus community or go outside of your unit, we ask that you use our template that has, the look and feel in the top right corner. In place of where the public reports had the information, we identify what type of data the report is using. So there's Redshift, frozen data, meaning that it's captured in one of our snapshots throughout the year, and then current data, meaning it's live or relatively live, it's refreshed every night. So that kind of helps users identify what they're looking at and make better understanding of what they're seeing. And this template has all of the containers that allow for this look and feel to be consistent throughout reports. I think there are 4 levels of containers probably in it. So like containers within containers within containers, and I think there's one more. So we didn't want users to have to build that on their own, so we give them this template, and that achieves it. And once they know how it's working, then they have had relative ease in using the template and building their own reports within it and getting that look and feel that we're looking for. And to do that, we had documentation that says why we're using a template, what are the components of it, style guide, best practices, what colors should you use, updating the footer to point to your own office and have a point of contact for that report, as well as a training exercise so that we put up a workbook that a user could work with, pre-made, worksheets within it, and then just getting used to laying them out. So step-by-step guidance on how to navigate using the containers, because it was one of the things that we identified in our office as being a little tricky and that we were hearing from other desktop users as well. Our community of practice sandbox, we have 2, the one with the templates that they can download, and then the sandbox that they can show reports to each other, as well as those training workbooks that I mentioned earlier. So that we identify the training workbooks with having the black titles so that they stand out. And There you can see that this one was guiding users on how to create a custom table, so putting parameters in the columns and allowing a user to build a report that way. And so that was one of our community of practice discussion sessions on how that works and having hands-on training doing that so that users could do that on their own.
All right, let's hold it here for a minute. Sure. So I'm going to take over and kind of finish us off, but I want to talk a little bit about the templates, now that you're seeing them, and about the community of practice. So the templates, we spent a lot of time that first year working with our users out in the colleges, the consumers of our data, to ask them how they wanted those templates to look. And so that template probably went through 5, 10, 15 iterations to get to what they wanted. And we were really balancing usability with what they were used to. The community of practice, at first, those data users, the data consumers, thought that the community of practice was about learning how to use our stuff. And so we got these people that didn't even have Tableau desktop on their desktop coming to our community of practice. And we were like, no, that's not what this is about. Because we now say, you know, community of practice, we meet once a month. It's an hour and a half. Tom or Amber or one of the other folks in our office that writes reports, they show tips and tricks, new things they've learned, ways to do things. We give an update every month about where we are in our server deployment. And then we have someone from the community present something they've done. And then we usually have about a half an hour for a hands-on exercise to try and train them. Because we recognize that as much as we love Brian, and Brian loves us, and we always bring him burger cookies, except this week I didn't, I'm sorry. A little family emergency prevented that. But we can't always depend on massive in-person, come for 3 days training. We have to be able to sustain the community some other way to learn these little things. And so the community of practice is really about engaging with report writers around campus. And we probably have 25 or so people that come on a regular basis and another 50 that are on the listserv that just want to keep an eye on what's going on, and they're using Tableau but aren't necessarily coming. So now I'm going to talk about how we support our users and really the strategy behind that. And so when I say that, I mean the consumers of our data. And so Tom showed you before the help site, but I want to talk about the decision that we made to put this wrapper around the main site and why we embedded the iframe and did this. We had some very engaging, passionate conversations, would you agree with that, Brian? About whether we should be directing people to the main Tableau site or some other site like this. And IT really said, but everything should be in Tableau, and we'll work with the landing page for server, and we'll make it pretty, and that'll take care of everything, and we don't need to do this wrapper. I see some scowling faces. We were really concerned that when we take server down for maintenance, we want to be able to send to put a message up that says, we've got a maintenance window, we send an email, but still, to anybody, we're in the middle of a maintenance window, we're out for, 2 hours. Or to be able to put this help at the bottom, there's a hole there, to be able to put this help at the bottom. Web accessibility, I told you before, accessibility was important. It's important to the university. The first release through, we literally, I feel so lame, no, that's a bad word. I feel so basic saying our first time through, the campus web accessibility statement was a comment on the worksheet that I made on every every worksheet that said, the campus is committed to web accessibility. Click here for the web accessibility statement. And I put it in the comments like, woohoo, I got a hack. It looked really bad, number one. And number two, Tableau changed the way comments displayed. And so it then went from being nicely at the bottom to like off to the side, and you had to turn it on. And I went, what are we going to do? Thankfully, we had this wrapper, and so we just added it to the bottom. So we've really benefited from having this wrapper and the ability to kind of control the top and bottom. It also, when you're in our site, the wrapper also puts a buffer on either side to help with the responsive design. And so we can flip on the responsive piece in Tableau and then control the size of that window in the HTML code. So I'm really glad at like 2 years ago us for making this decision, but it was really a hard initial decision, and I'm glad we hired a GA. Thankfully, we're at a university. You can hire a GA to write your HTML code. Super glad we did that, and I definitely would recommend it again. And we're now looking at doing something more sophisticated, doing an actual app. Different people in IT now willing to talk to us about that, so that it's not just HTML code anymore, or won't be. So again, talking through this Confluence page. It's not beautiful. You know, we have no illusions that our help page is the most lovely, but it was a tool that we had available that was easy to web author, and that I could get a variety of people on staff working on putting stuff in there. And so it was sort of a zero-cost solution. At some point, we'll probably go more sophisticated on that as well. But thinking through kind of an agile methodology, right? We got something out that worked, tried it out, see how many people use it, what are they looking at before we go full on designing a help page. The other thing we did, and I'm really glad it passed us for this, we were really concerned about how people would learn to use the Tableau, not to use Tableau itself, but to understand what our filters did and how to get to the data that they wanted. And so in our old site, I used to have a little quiz that I would give new users and say, you know, here, go see if you can find these answers. And it was a Word document, and we sent it to them. This is that quiz in Confluence. And so we ask a question that requires some filtering, and then we give them a hint. Sometimes it doesn't require a hint, it's that easy. And then we give them the answer and show them how to get that answer. And so this is on-demand training, essentially, that doesn't require us. We also post on that Confluence site we have a little roadshow. We post things that are helpful for using Tableau, and also for, like, as a report writer, and also for using our site.
Yeah, all of our community of practice documentation and presentations that we do there live on Confluence as well, so that they can be accessed if you missed it or something.
Yeah, so if you look here, that table of contents, it's not just the table of contents for the help site, but also there's just a pile of other content that we push out to Confluence. And you know, it's just a wiki, but it's a nice way to organize that with not a lot of training on our part required. So, lessons learned. How are we doing on time? Oh, we're doing great. So, I can't say enough times, start small and iterate. Like, we've learned a lot. We've had to go back and change things that we did the first time through that we went, what were we thinking when we did that? And so if you start small and then get the reaction to that from your most popular and trusted users, then you don't have to do all 40 reports, right? So if we had just done them all ourselves and then rolled it out in one block, we'd have spent twice the amount of time because we'd have had to redo everything again. So iterate, iterate, iterate. You are going to make mistakes. It will happen. So you better build time in for those mistakes. And you better give yourself permission to make mistakes. I say over and over, we're going to get it wrong. We're now in the middle of our data modernization, and our data warehouse developers keep wanting to perfect it. Like, let's get the perfect data model. I'm like, no, let's just get a good enough data model that our users can take a look at and see if it works. I don't need all of the fields defined perfectly. What I really need is to see how we're going to roll out row-level security, or how we're going to roll out the point in time versus up-to-date all-in-one warehouse. At the moment, we have 2 warehouses, our frozen warehouse and our current warehouse. And our current warehouse is upside down. It has less information in it than we have in all of our student information systems. And so we got to get users used to what this new thing will look like. And so, like I said, we, onto the Tableau side, built in the time to make those mistakes, knew it was going to happen, tried to not waste as much time by small and then fixing the mistakes as we went. Communication really, really, really matters. We post an update. Okay, we try to post an update once a month. We actually post an update once every 10 weeks, maybe, of what are the new reports that we've put up. What are our accomplishments? How did we get how did we do on our milestone? When did we meet a goal? Because at our place, there's a history of software implementations that go a little sideways. And so folks need to hear from you and hear that things went well. And what I find is when you've been successful, people are like, oh, well, of course that just worked. They don't even notice that you changed. We have people that are like, what did profiles used to look like? What did that old Cold Fusion site look like? Wait, when did you change? It can't have been just that recently. It wasn't painful. And so communicating with them all along the way, it helps document for us that we actually did something, even if it doesn't document for them, because they're just happy. So communication matters for your audience, but also for yourself as a way of looking back. My boss, if any of you know Sharon Lavoie, she is a fierce defender of this project's reputation, and it's absolutely necessary. And so we were the first thing on campus that required multi-factor authentication. And we were not happy about that. And the number of times that I heard Sharon say, you're putting me on the bleeding edge, and I don't want to be on the bleeding edge because everyone's going to think that my project is a failure because they don't know how to use an MFA. What are you doing to me? And I gotta keep this project's reputation as being successful. And then we figure out how to make it successful, even if it is on the bleeding edge. The VPN was probably our least effective issue because everybody would just go, oh, it's down. But even then, she said, how are you going to fix this? How are you going to make it so that people know when it's down, what it looks like, and when it's just the VPN issue, what it looks like, so that we can keep sending them to a website that says, no, you just have to fix your VPN. How are you going to approach that? So guarding the reputation of the project without throwing someone else under the bus is a good thing. And our IT partners have been really, really good, by the way, even though it might sound like we aired a little of our public struggles. They have been with us all the way, and they've been just as anxious to guard that reputation. And then lastly, we get by with help from our friends. And so Technion has been great for us, giving us the help we need at the time we need it. We probably last saw Brian 6 months ago, but we know that when we need him, We call him. Sometimes he even just does a phone consultation to help us through an issue. And so targeting when you need someone, put that contract in place so you get the hours when you need them, and then they just sit there if you don't need them, has been really, really helpful. I would say the rest of the Tableau community is also part of that getting by with help from our friends. Eric Mayberry sent us a really great, I think it was Eric, it was at least on the Slack that you do, a great server administrator like dashboard. Oh my gosh, we love that thing. We use it all the time. We then know who's looked at something, so if we need to fix something, we can kind of talk to those people. Did that work for you? Those kinds of things. And certainly the Tableau community that always has an answer. If you just Google it, somebody else has had the problem. Sometimes that answer is not an answer that you necessarily want to go down that path with, but at least you know that there are answers out there. So it's been super, super helpful. That's all we have. So we are open for Q&A, and we also, I'm going to switch us over to, Tom can see with his young eyes. Hopefully. Am I on 4?
Are you asleep?
No, I just woke me up. Oh, I know what I am. I was going to say, I'm going to switch us over to, I'm asleep and on duplicate. Anyway, we do have everything up if you have questions and want to see things. Yeah, I'm plugged in. Oh, I'm on 5, not on 4. There you go. Numbers. Who needs numbers? It's not like we use them all the time. Kathy.
How do you manage who has access to what? Does the School of Arts and Science get to see the engineering college's data? How do you manage all that?
That is a great question. So Kathy asked, how do we manage who has access to what? And does the School of Arts and Science get to see engineering's data? The answer is yes. So at the aggregate level, everybody has access to everything. We do not, so if it's about how many students you have, our campus data policy, and we have a data policy group that is the stewards, and the stewards sit on a data management group. The data policy is our data trustees, who are the bosses of the stewards at the VP level or AVP level. And we rewrote our whole policy to say the data belong to the University of Maryland, not to any one school. And therefore, everyone should have the data that they need to do their job. We actually got that group to buy off on that and on, so Brian worked with us on a whole entitlements table so that if you drilled down to see unit record data, that only the people in engineering could see engineering and only the people in RHU could see RHU. And that was really laggy on server for us. And so we said, we have these super users on campus. If we narrow who needs drill down, maybe everybody gets to see everything. And our DPAC, the policy group, bought it. And so even at the individual student level, we control what data are visible, but everybody can see everything. Luckily, that's the way it is in our main systems too, our transaction systems. So if you're an advisor in the College of Behavioral and Social Sciences, you can pull a unit record up for a student who's in engineering because that student might be, about to change or whatever. So yeah, we lucked out.
To answer this question, do you have any layers of exclusivity in terms of who can see what, or is it up the entire chain?
So we use Active Directory groups to control the permissions on drill down. So if I look, admissions has no drill down users.
Yeah. Go to enrollments.
Admissions will not let anyone see their drill down data. Yeah, so if we go to enrollments, And you can see here, we've got a ton of work in progress and other things. If you go to enrollments and you look at permissions, we've got all users, which is none. Then we've got employees, who are any campus employee, including student employees that can view things. Then we've got the drill down users. There are only 73 people. They apply through a Koali Rice form, like if any of you remember Koali, Rice handles the workflow. They apply through a form, the data stewards sign off on that access, say, yes, these people, like you have to say on the form that you'll use the data for the appropriate reasons and what your rationale is. And then 73 people have it. And so we have to that level. And then why don't you go, Tom, to one of the restricted use ones. So in our restricted use boxes, we wanted to give some people access to, so one of the things we put in restricted use was the AAU data exchange faculty salaries by zip code. So yay, AAU has Tableau. We went, downloaded that report, added Big Ten to it. But in restricted use, there are just a few people who can see one report that's in there, but we've set it, you can see the workbook and data sources are unlocked. So each report has its own users, and then this whole project, we just add people in as they become restricted use users. So we add them to the Active Directory group there, and then we use the individual permissions in any one report. So we're controlling it kind of a couple different ways. Yes? So the question was, what version of server are we on? We're on 2018.1 right now, and we're going to upgrade to 2 in November. So we try to stay one version behind the release that's out, just so that somebody else finds the bugs for us. When we upgraded, was it 10.3 that was the bear of an upgrade?
10.4.
10.4. My God, that upgrade was painful. And it was, what?
It was 10.4, so that was when they introduced, I believe, padding. And so that template that you saw kind of got wrecked. And so we had to go and edit all of our reports before they went live to everyone. So we did we had all hands on deck in our office going through, documented how to make the quick changes that were relatively quick, but it was just a number of workbooks and tabs to do it.
So since that, and really before then even, like we've just sort of let it settle. So usually we put whatever is the newest release on our QA box, look at how things look, play around with it, plan for however long it's going to take us to do that upgrade. And then when we do the upgrade, it's usually, 2 hours, poof, done. We'll see how long it takes us for 2018.2. We're going to have Brian come visit us for that. Yes?
I'm just curious if you're using any student workers or internships, if within your group, and if that, what kind of different issues that might play.
Sure. So the question is, were we using student workers and what issues that brings in terms of data security and such? So we have a graduate assistant that we used to build, so our first GA built the HTML website and the Navigator and did some of our public reports. Obviously, we had to give him permission to the warehouse. He had to sign off on all the things that you have to sign off on. And we hope for the best, right? Our undergraduate students, we have 5 of them that work in our office, mostly as, they take care of processing surveys, do that kind of stuff, and for office coverage. They're all testers for us. And so we've trained them, and we have a whole QA checklist of, we want you to do 1 year from the 90s, 1 year from the aughts, 3 years from the teens. We want you to check this college and this department. And so we have a checklist that they go through, and we train them how to do the QA, and then they take care of it. So we've given them access to server, but only 3 of us in our office, Tom and I and our colleague Amber, are server admins. So the students can view, but they can't publish. And so it kind of mitigates that risk.
Right. And they do not have unit record level data
Oh, no,
access.
and they don't have drill down unit record level. And so really, the philosophy of if you wouldn't get drill down data to the transactional system or drill down access in the transactional system, you should not get drill down access here. And the stewards kind of manage that as well. Yes? How do we test whether it's accessible or not? That's a great question. So the first piece on accessibility that we did was using the colorblind template. At an institution like Maryland, where red is everything, that was a major, major concession to get people to make. Kendrick's not here, but our first thing out, everything was blue, and they kept going, it looks like Duke. It cannot look like Duke. What are you doing? Yep. And so our concession was making that banner red, but if you look at our reports, you'll see that the lines are blue, or the bars are blue, orange. So the first thing that we do is turn on the colorblind palette. The next thing that we did was turning on the view data. Everyone can view data so that it's like that, right? So that, because when you do that, then a screen viewer can tab through it. Then the next thing we're going to work on is because we were putting things in an iframe, initially the stuff at the top, the refresh and those kinds of things weren't accessible. Like you could see them, but favoriting you couldn't find. But more than that, Tableau had not made those reader accessible. So when we went to 2018.1, Brian sent us a note and said, hey, this is going to help your accessibility problem. And we said, oh, that's all the more reason to go fast to 2018.1. So trying to pay attention to what the software has designed in it for accessibility and then pick those features is the biggest thing we do. We do have accessibility readers that we can test it with. Right, or an image. You'll note that we're not going crazy with chart types or images, in part because of that, right? In part because of consistency. And so it might look a little boring, but everyone can be bored, right? At the same level. We have a couple maps that we're starting to roll out, but yes, I mean, that's also a limit, a thing we do.
Yep.
Yeah.
So there is, if you search on the Tableau community, there's a title line. We search for that. So we have dashboards that we can have our own colors. And you click the button and it changes the color automatically. Yeah, you can choose the palette or
Right, yeah. And I think we've stayed away from the circle charts in part because our boss doesn't like them, but in part because it does really make you reliant on looking to see. The other thing we have to do, or we have to start working on, is putting image descriptions in when we use a map or use things like that, right? So because that's not work that we're ready to take on, we've again chosen to do things that we hope make it as accessible as possible. And we have an accessibility department, for lack of better description, on campus in our IT department that evaluates websites for accessibility. We consulted with them the last time Brian was here, there at Maryland. And then one of the people that was on our initial user group was from our iSchool, the Information Sciences School. What are they now? The College of Information Science. Is that right? And he was an accessibility and usability expert, and so he helped us as well. the benefit of being on a college campus where you can bring people in the back, and then we'll get you. Yeah. Yeah, Eric has a Slack workspace. So, yeah.
Are you logged in?
I think I'm logged in. Eric is running a Slack space for higher ed Tableau. And if you contact Eric up here at the front, you don't mind me saying this, do you? Oh, yeah. Pop his email.
Scroll down, you see your live, I took a picture of you guys.
Oh, cool. There's Eric. And so click on,
Maybe like a month, very like the food doc.
Is it in there?
I don't know. Just shoot me an email and I'll get you out.
over here, yes.
I was going to ask about the campus navigator. Is that a dashboard embedded within it? And are you using story points on the left side to do that, or how does that work?
Over here?
Yes.
So this is a table that we built, so that's one worksheet. This is a worksheet here with the title. This is its own worksheet, and then this one is its own worksheet. And some of these have different connections so that you can get to that data, so you can get the tags and the report links and all those things associated. And then, so yeah, I think there's
Then at the bottom,
at
that's
the bottom, this one's a
multiple
worksheet.
Right.
And then this parameter controls which of 3 worksheets display down here. So there's a number of different things going on to get the full functionality that we wanted. It went through several iterations.
So we just got a time check from our friendly tech guy. I think we're the last session. So if that is correct, we are happy, that is correct. We'll turn in our mics so that he can go home, but we're happy to continue answering questions up here. Cool?
Great, thank you.